Americans for Prosperity North Dakota proudly supported important policy improvements that broke barriers for all North Dakotans this legislative session. From tackling unnecessary and burdensome occupational licensing standards to fighting for tax relief, AFP is proud to have played a part in improving the lives of North Dakotans this year. Join AFP today by visiting www.afpnd.org. This advertisement was paid for by Americans for Prosperity. Congressman Kelly Armstrong joins me now. Kelly, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Rob.
I know you're a busy man, so let's get to it. First of all, I want to talk the Senate passing sinking themselves with the House on a continuing resolution for fiscal matters. So we're avoiding a government shutdown, which is good. But I was just reading a tweet from Senator Kevin Cramer saying, he's kind of tired of this. He's kind of tired of coming down to the brink, and we ought to actually pass a budget. Do you agree?
Yeah, I actually voted against it because we got it 4 hours before we were asked to vote on it. And it's not even a matter of whether I had a chance to go through it. My staff didn't even have a chance to go through it. So, and the Senate had a couple other days. All we're asking for, I don't think it's too much to ask for, to get a day to go through these types of things. But I also agree with Senator Cramer, we got to get back on a normal budgeting cycle.
How do we do that?
Towards the end of last Congress, the Senate was actually passing budget out, and we were working towards a normal budget cycle. But when you have what's happened now, and we've taken away any pay for us in the Democratic-controlled House, I'm not sure. The Democrats came out early in this Congress and just said they weren't going to do a budget. So I don't think we get there right now.
That's pretty tough with the party that controls the House. That by the way, is constitutionally charged with originating the budgets. They're not supposed to originate in the Senate. They're supposed to begin in the House of Representatives, and the party in control of that House is saying, well, we're not going to budget. What do you do?
Yeah, there's minority protections in the rules set up in the Senate, and there's a reason that we're on the House side, we make fun of sometimes how slow the things move in the Senate, but one of the reasons for that is there's some minority protections in the rules, while in the House there's no such thing. If there's one more Democrat elected to the U.S. House of Representatives than a Republican, they control the entire agenda. So.
Let's talk about the thing that's making the most headlines, President Trump and impeachment. Speaker Pelosi coming out and saying that her party is going to commence an impeachment procedure. But this is all a little confusing because there are, in fact, I believe it's the House Judiciary Committee in which you have a seat. I've heard Democrats say that that's already an impeachment proceeding, and now we're going to begin another impeachment proceeding. And this is only something our Congress has done twice before in our nation's 243-year history. So how is this unfolding on the ground?
Well, so I think it's important to recognize that Speaker Pelosi's announcement 2 days ago was, 3 days when this is posted, was really a good headline. But until 218 people vote for it on the floor of the House, it got no more official with the announcement. It just unfortunately will slow down more of the regular stuff that goes on in this town.
So do you think does it really change anything, or is this Democrats just saying, fine, we're going to do an impeachment, but is Congress actually going to do anything differently?
Well, I think it changes some things, and I think it changes them in an unfortunate way because now they're going to direct 6 other committee chairs to start feeding everything to the Judiciary Committee. It doesn't change any legal status regarding impeachment, but as somebody who served on the Judiciary Committee since I got here, I can tell you how much time we've wasted on this, and now apparently 6 other committees are going to be wasting as much time as we have.
Now, you're on the Judiciary Committee. Does the process play out where your committee drafts the articles of impeachment and then passes them to the full House for passage? Is that how that works?
Yes.
Have you seen any proposals at this point? Do we have any idea what the articles are going to be based on?
No, absolutely not. This has all been, we had the Corey Lewandowski hearing. These are all hearings that are designed to, generate and invigorate the Democratic base. We have seen nothing formal yet.
Do you feel, let's set all that aside for a moment. We've obviously had some revelations about President Trump and his interactions with the leader of Ukraine. Now, and let's remember, Democrats have been talking about impeachment since Inauguration Day. There was a progressive left-wing group that launched an online petition. that I think now people, it claims it has 1.4 million signatures. They launched that on Inauguration Day. I mean, 3 months into his term, we had Democrats, Representative Maxine Waters, I think in March of 2017, was already tweeting about impeachment. So, I mean, Democrats have been talking about this for a long time. The reasons for impeachment have shifted over time. The Ukraine thing is the latest thing. Is there anything in the Ukraine situation that you're concerned about? I mean, when you read the transcript now today, we had the release of the whistleblowers report. Are you seeing anything in there that concerns you that warrants scrutiny?
Warranting scrutiny and warranting impeachment are two different things.
Sure. Let's set the question of impeachment aside. Is there anything in all that bothers you?
Well, first I'm going to start with, again, this is a situation where everything moved faster than getting the evidence that has been brought in. That happens way too often in this town, and I think it's been happening a lot lately on the Democratic side, is where the media narrative, I don't think there's any doubt the media, particularly in this town, hates President Trump, pushes things farther than they go. The biggest thing I noticed so far in this is the actual transcript of the call and the whistleblower complaint from a guy who wasn't on the call are very, very different. And of course they made all these announcements before either of those two things were made public, because they had to be unclassified. I mean, we get in this situation where we want instant release, instant gratification for everything that's going on, but there's real national security reasons why it took a while to unclassify those documents. Not the least of which is there's some fairly unflattering things being said about other world leaders, which is not good for the United States.
And it's also a two-party conversation where the leader of another sovereign nation is on the other end of the telephone, and we don't necessarily just want to leak what he has to say without checking with Ukraine, and not leak, I guess release what he has to say on that. Now, do you feel like President Trump? I mean, it's interesting what you said, that the way the whistleblower characterized the call versus the actual transcript of the call was very, very different. When I did read the call, I mean, President Trump did ask for an investigation into Vice President Biden. Now, there was nothing in there that hinted at a quid pro quo. There was nothing in there that was like, do this and I'll do that, which I think obviously would have risen to the... Sorry.
It only brings up Rudy Giuliani after the Ukrainian president did. I read that transcript. I mean, listen, if we want to talk about election security, let's not forget that the entire election security portion of this has been nothing but a straw man for Democrats to hold "we don't like this president" hearings. And that started with collusion with Russia. When that didn't work, it moved to obstruction. When that didn't work, it moved to Bob Mueller. That didn't work, it moved to Corey Lewandowski and Hope Hicks, and now we're on this. So, yeah, I mean, when you read that transcript, it reads, I mean, they're asking about investigations that I think warrant investigations. The fact that somebody is your political opponent doesn't have anything to do with the fact that actually crowdsourced and Russian and Ukrainian interference are things that happened in the 2016 election, and they do warrant an investigation. That being said, as always, sometimes I wish he would say things differently.
Yeah. Well, I think that is part of the problem is he says things and it's not as carefully worded as previous leaders. And because of that, listen, the president of the United States is probably the most scrutinized person on the planet, whoever's holding that office. And so when you say things, you need to be careful, and President Trump is not careful. And I think that's a valid criticism of him, to be sure.
Absolutely. But I also would say when you read that transcript, that reads, I mean, there was a lot of mutual admiration going back and forth in that transcript. And it reads like, I mean, now we're hearing the very far part of this. I mean, the conspiracy theorists are, that's not the real transcript. And I mean, all of these things.
Yeah. And
by the way, it's interesting to note that Chairman Schiff of the Intelligence Committee started yesterday morning upon release of that transcript already walking back and saying it doesn't matter if there was no quid pro quo because it was inferred and all of these things. I mean, they get out over their skis, they make all their announcements, then the evidence starts pouring in, and it's not nearly what they purport it to be.
And just to rebut myself to a point that you just made, this conversation was not ever really intended to be a public conversation. Now, it subsequently has become public, but when the two world leaders were talking, I imagine a lot of world leaders are very candid with one another when speaking behind closed doors, which is why we afford world leaders that sort of environment, right, where they could speak to each other candidly and not have it be on the record and not have it be splashed all over the headlines. Because if we could only conduct international affairs in the scrutiny of the limelight of the public, all these negotiations, we would never get anything done, because it would all just be a lot of self-serving grandstanding and everything else, and nothing would ever get done.
Well, and I think that's probably the most concerning thing about this whole thing, is that in our quest, and I'm very glad they released it. I'm glad it came out early. I hope the actual IG report comes out. I mean, and we deal with all of those information. I have no doubt it will, because I'll tell everybody the same thing. I'll tell your listeners, just go read it all. I mean, there's a reason we don't allow hearsay in court. But I think the long-term concern is because we have these short-term political heightened skirmishes, which by all accounts have just been exceptionally ramped up during this presidency. We are causing long-term national security concerns, because if you are the leader of a foreign country, how likely are you going to have a frank conversation with the president of the United States, knowing that you could be involved in our internal partisan politics within 48 hours?
Just to be clear, based on everything that's in front of you right now, you are no on impeachment, if that question comes up.
I am no on impeachment. Yes.
Okay. Let me ask you this question, because I just zooming back from the moment. And again, the impeachment question, the justification for it has shifted, right? I mean, remember, prior to Robert Mueller throwing a big vat of cold water on it, the Russian thing was supposed to be the reason for impeachment. It shifted, right? It shifted over time, and now here we are, the Ukrainian thing. So Democrats have wanted impeach. It's like they've decided they wanted to impeach President Trump and have been grasping for the right not the right moment, but the right justification for it ever since. And I think that's unfortunate. And I am very, very worried, because again, only two presidents in our 243 years of history have been impeached. Richard Nixon resigned before he could be impeached. Warren Harding probably would have ended up being impeached, but he died. Only two presidents in 243 years have actually been impeached. There's a reason why this doesn't happen very often. I am worried that Democrats have been so cavalier about this, have been so casual about it all, that whether or not President Trump is impeached or not impeached, or at some moment in the future, based on new revelations, deserves to be impeached, this is now a political tactic. And every new president coming in is going to have the cloud of impeachment hanging over their head, because Republicans are going to do it to Democrats too. I hope Republicans don't, but that's what I'm worried that where we're at, Kelly.
Well, and I think it's even deeper than that. And I mean, this goes for any time you do investigations. Remember, you investigate conduct, not people. You investigate events, not people. And when you're talking about their reason for impeachment has shifted, it's because they investigate this person. Like, they don't like him. They don't like his style. They don't like how he talks. They don't like him. So then they look, we used to call this in criminal defense, you're fishing against a person. That's not how investigations work. Investigations work on investigating conduct. And when you shift that burden to particular people, then you have a whole different misconstrued set of priorities. How everything goes on is different, and it's not the way it works in any other way, anywhere else, nor should it. And now we're doing it that way. So you're right, and I hope we don't ever go to that level as well. I mean, there's too many important things to be getting done down here to continue to have these show hearings that don't purport to do anything other than say President Trump is bad and we don't like him.
In my lifetime, because I mean this has been happening, and I can think of two big examples in my lifetime. The 2000 election, right? Bush v. Gore. That was the first presidential election that I could vote in. Ever since then, it seems like every election cycle, the election was stolen, right? Whether it's a congressional election or the national election, there just seems to be we throw dirt on every electoral outcome, because that's just sort of the political tactic since Bush v. Gore in 2000. The other thing is the filibuster, right? I mean, it used to be we had the filibuster in place, but then each party started nuking it, and now the filibuster slowly going away, which, by the way, was a requirement in the Senate that we have at least some degree of bipartisanship before we pass a piece of legislation. I liked the filibuster. A lot of people didn't.
But I like the real filibuster, not just I can slit a paper and stop and have one.
I agree with you. If you're going to filibuster, I want you on the Senate floor reading out of the phone book. Do they even have phone book? Well, we don't even have phone books anymore, but doing something. I don't know. But you and I agree on that. I worry that impeachment has just become a new political cudgel, and every new president that comes in is going to be impeach. And my goodness, that's not going to be good for our country.
Well, and by the way, I would just point out that from people, and I've taken criticism for this on the other side, for those of your listeners that think I'm purely a partisan hack on this issue, I've defended the Ilhan Omar issue as well. I've said, listen, she has an impeachment hearing every 2 years. We can't invalidate every election the day after it's over. And the answer to my Democratic colleagues, if you don't like the guy, beat him on the second Tuesday in November of 2020. And also, for the most part, we ratchet everything up to automatically removal of office or impeachment and all of that. And that doesn't mean some of these things don't warrant criticism. They don't warrant scrutiny. They don't, all of those things. But we can't just say we fundamentally disagree with somebody, so we should kick them out of office. There's a reason we have elections in the U.S. House every 2 years. There's a reason we have presidential elections every 4 years. And there's a reason that we do that. And one of the reasons is so people can be confident in that the elections matter. And that's what we're getting towards.
Well, and that's the other problem.
People think they don't.
I think Democrats, by talking about impeachment since day one, and maybe even before, of this president's term in office, they have really undermined their credibility to pursue impeachment now. I mean, setting aside how you and I feel about the Ukrainian situation, if that really does rise to the level, for the sake of argument, of being worthy of impeachment, there is going to be a faction of the public that's rolling their eyes saying, you've been talking about impeachment since day one. Why should we believe you on anything? I mean, this is the problem. When everybody wants everything investigated and everything's a scandal, I think it starts to blur out real, actual scandals that deserve scrutiny and deserve oversight.
No, I'll give you. I couldn't agree with you more on this entire thing. There's a reason you talk to your kids about crying wolf, and it's the story you continue to have, because everything gets drowned out in the noise. And at the same time, there was real momentum to get USMCA passed to do a prescription drug pricing bill, possibly get something on surprise billing. And I've been on the floor of the House 2 days in a row arguing about the Debbie Smith Act, which is money to test backlogged rape kits. And we can't seem to get any of those things done. If you ever want to know why Congress has a lower approval rating than the plague, that is not being able to pass the Debbie Smith Act right now is an absolute reason for that. Even notwithstanding the fact that I don't have a fondness for bills named after people, but this is a really great bill.
Well, let's talk about that, because every time you come on, we're talking about the latest Trump tweet or the latest whatever with President Trump. Let's talk about some of the actual things that Congress is doing. What since the last time we talked, what has Congress accomplished, or at least the House of Representatives?
Not much. We passed a continuing resolution and we, like I said, we got it in 4 hours. We had a great time back home in district, but I don't want to belabor the point, but you know what? I actually do want to belabor the point. The Debbie Smith Act has been reauthorized twice under voice vote, unanimous consent, through the House, through the Senate. This bill's sole purpose is to end and reduce the backlog of DNA kits in rape cases. This is a standalone bill that has absolutely no reason that it shouldn't be being addressed right now, and instead it's held. The Senate's passed us over one with under unanimous consent. We could take it up tomorrow and pass it. The funding ends in 4 days, and we're dealing with an issue that I don't know how anything could be more bipartisan. The single biggest way to get convictions without victims having to testify at trial in a sexual assault case is DNA evidence. I mean, this is just a no-brainer. There's no reason it should be being used as a partisan bargaining chip, and it never has before. You know, it was signed once into law by George W. Bush. It was signed once into law by Barack Obama. The last time it was reauthorized, the Democrats controlled the Senate and the House, Republicans controlled the House. The time before that, it was flipped. And so only under these heightened times can something as simple and as necessary and as important as ending the backlog to DNA rape kits become a partisan issue. And I don't get frustrated a lot. You know me. You've known me for a long time. There's a reason I went on the floor 2 days in a row, and there's a reason when I come back, I'll do it again, because we're going to go on a 2-week recess, and in that period of time, 5,000 women across the country are going to get raped, and we can't seem to figure out a way to help them get some semblance of justice in that as we move through this. And it's beyond mind-boggling to me.
Is there an opportunity here to say, listen, if Congress is going to be so addled with partisan politics that they're not going to govern, let's just let the states do some of this stuff again? I mean, as a federalist and a conservative, I've been asking for that for years. I mean, maybe if Congress is going to be so logjam, let's take some of this stuff off Congress's plate and let the states decide, realizing that not all of it can, and Congress does actually have some things it has to do, but I mean, are there things we could push back to the states and just say, listen, Congress isn't functional, so let's let the states govern instead?
The more of that, the better. But then I will also tell you, yesterday at Labor in the U.S. House, they marked up a bill that took away states' rights to be right-to-work states. North Dakota's a right-to-work state.
Yeah.
And they're going to pass a bill out of the democratically controlled Congress that says North Dakota can no longer be a right-to-work state.
Great.
So outside of being completely dysfunctional, my Democratic colleagues are getting pretty good at expanding the federal government. Lucky for us, we still have a majority.
Let's have Congress, which can't even budget. Let's have Congress do more, right? Because Congress clearly is just a wonderful place to be right now. Looking forward to 2020. You're running for re-election, right?
Yes.
I figured you were.
My staff's probably going to get mad at me now because apparently you're supposed to do an official announcement.
I think you're supposed to do one of those things where you go on like this, or like you sent out a press release saying that you're going to make an announcement in like 4 cities across the state. And we're all supposed to pretend like we don't know what that is. That's my favorite. As a member of the meeting.
The reason for that's important.
Well, I understand.
It takes you 6 months to figure out how to get around, let alone knowing who to talk to move stuff.
Sure.
And when you're a state with only one congressman, somebody who's running for this position should be willing to dedicate some time to be effective for the state, because I think I'm pretty good at it now, but I'll get better as I'm here.
Sure. I agree with that. I think it takes, I think sometimes we are awful, cynical about the job that politicians do. There is real work and there is some knowledge, and some of these policy questions are complicated. Unfortunately, those ones don't get as much attention as the sort of outrage of the day does. Rumors are that State Representative Ruth Buffalo, Democrat from Fargo, may be thinking about a congressional run. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, my thoughts on that are the same as I was when I was state party chairman, when I was an old baseball coach. You take care of the baseball and everything else happens the way it does. We're going to put out. We'll deal with how we deal with those issues when we move forward. If Representative Buffalo decides to jump in the race, I wish her luck, and I'm going to do everything I can to beat her.
All right, Kelly. Thanks for your time.
Thanks.